Hey guys, what's up? It is week 270, and to start this off, I did mention it just kind of like in the little like quotes or text that popped up last week. For some reason, I mixed up Roger Spotswood with Roger Donaldson. Not the same guy. One is Canadian, and one is from New Zealand, so I mixed up all their movies. I thought they were the same guy. My bad. I do a little bit of corrections on that, but just wanted to make sure that people that are listening to it, audio version, didn't get wrong information, everything like that. So let's hop into these reviews, and the first up is a new 4K from Blue Underground. This is God Told Me To by Larry Cohen. Now, I'd covered this one a little bit ago, probably, I don't know, maybe a couple years back, and that was the first time I had watched it. And I'd seen most of Larry Cohen's horror exploitation movies. God Told Me To was one that I had heard a lot of good things about, so and I just missed it. So when I eventually watched it, I liked it. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would, but rewatching it this time, I got a lot more out of it. Probably due to maybe the transfer, the Dolby Atmos, but I really just generally think I came around more on it and just kind of, I guess, in a weird way, knew what to expect. So the plot is a fairly touchy one in New York City. Of course, it's Larry Cohen in New York City. Essentially, what happens is people just start committing these random acts of violence, mass murder. And the first one is one of the most, I'd say, controversial and probably disturbing for people. Somebody climbs a tower and starts just shooting people at random. It's up to Tony Lobianco from The Honeymoon Killers, which is an excellent movie. He's really solid in this as a cop. He gets this guy, he goes up and talks to him. And before the guy commits suicide, he tells him, God told me to. And then there's other string of murders, including one of which has Andy Kaufman in it before he was famous in one of the craziest, most ballsiest guerrilla-style filmmaking things of all time during a parade, a police parade, right? Irish police parade deal. So like that's awesome. There's lots of crazy stuff like that, and it's one of these movies when you ever listen to Cohen talk about his films and everything as a screenwriter, he was a screenwriter more just as much as a director, if not more, because he wrote stuff that he didn't direct, like the Maniac Cop films and stuff like that, and Phone Booth. But he talks about, he never understood when movies got written in a corner. He's like, how? How could they get written in a corner? You just write yourself out. You're the boss. And you can tell, like, it's like his script, I don't feel like he has outlines or anything like that. He just kind of goes with it. And, like, he has these messages and all this stuff that pops up in it, and he embraces the themes regardless. God Told Me To goes to these bizarre, weird places involving alien abduction and, new species and like, almost like these hermaphroditic characters, and it has a really solid cast of character actors, including and old Hollywood people in there. Sylvia Sidney, who I know from Beetlejuice, she's got one of the best roles in that, just because my age, of course, And it also has people like Richard Lynch, who's one of the all-time great character actors, very memorable for people, and he plays one of the most bizarre, strange kind of performances of his career, and a long line of strange, bizarre performances. So it's got this great gritty New York quality. It's got really solid cast in here, and it just kind of delivers on the weirdness, and it keeps going into a direction that you really don't know what to expect. As a whole, like, it's also, like I said, riddled with people you recognize. You might not know their names. They're Cohen regulars, and also just a bunch of people that you're like, oh, that guy, this guy, that guy. So like, I mean, this is a really interesting flick. It's one of Cohen's different ones. I mean, if you compare it to, like, It's Alive or The Stuff, and Cue the Winged Serpent, all his movies are so different, yet so the same. So anyways, as far as special features are concerned on God Told Me To, the 4K has a new audio commentary with Steve Mitchell, who I believe did direct King Cohen, which is the documentary about Larry Cohen, which is excellent, and Troy Howarth, who I love. Troy's a great guy. Steve Mitchell kind of talks a little bit about, Cohen more so when Troy Howarth pops in with, like, character actor and actor information and all that kind of stuff. And also there's an old commentary again with Larry Cohen on here, who's since passed, of course, died a couple years ago, unfortunately. And we have some older features that were on the Blu-ray. They're not super old. They look like they were made for the initial Blu-ray, which probably came out 5-6 years ago, which is Heaven and Hell on Earth, interview with star Tony Lobianco, Bloody Good Times, interview with special effects artist Steve Neal, God Told Me to Bone, new Beverly Q&A with Larry Cohen. He says a lot of fun jokes and all that kind of stuff. And then Lincoln Center Q&A with Larry Cohen. So got a decent feature, decent amount of special features on here. Not anything super extravagant, not a bunch of them, but enough. And Cohen tells great stories about the movie, and he mentions like Kaufman, interacting with Kaufman and bringing up the dub line, all sorts of kind of little interesting, nice tidbits. And it's worth seeing just to see the kind of guerrilla filmmaking that they pulled off in such a kind of a budget and all this kind of stuff. It's just like Larry Cohen is definitely just one of these people that could work his magic, and he definitely worked a lot of magic and had a great career. He's one of the most popular horror directors, or even film exploitation cult directors. I say he's more of a cult director, although a lot of his films are definitely in the horror genre. But yeah, so like it didn't let a lot of these budgetary constraints didn't stop him from having alien abductions and a good cast and it being well shot and a great score too. The story goes that Bernard Herrmann was going to make this score, and he had done the score for It's Alive and everything, and they went out to dinner the night before, and he passed away that night, and he didn't do the score, but like his understudy or protege did the score for it. And the score's really powerful and well done. And again, it's kind of a controversial nature. He always has a controversial nature to his films, or he has an interesting kind of idea, like the stuff we have, the consumerism, all sorts of stuff in his movies. So yeah, check out God Told Me To on 4K. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Again, the 4K has the feature and the 2 commentaries and some trailers and stuff, and the Blu-ray in here has the rest of the features. So don't think that they're not on there if you pop in the 4K. Again, it has Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision, and it really sounds pretty good. Visually, it looks excellent as well. So check out God Told Me To. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And again, I think I watched this the first time before I had seen Honeymoon Killers. So I knew Tony LoBianco a little bit, but that Honeymoon Killers performance really is something special. And I think he's really solid in this one as well. And it has a great closing line. Good stuff. Okay, the next one is from Alamo Drafthouse, or Drafthouse Films, and MVD, of course, and this is another reissue. This is The Keeping Room, and this one interested me because it's a period piece. It sounded like right up my alley, kind of a Civil War period piece. We followed a story of kind of like two Southern sisters, and it's right like the Union is invading the South, and just kind of like the whole idea, Sherman's March and everything, where they just destroyed the South and burned everything in its path. And we follow these 2 sisters that are kind of by themselves, along with a slave that they seem to, have a closeness to. These 3 women trying to survive. And right in the beginning, we are introduced to a couple of Union soldiers that are obviously ruthless, mean-spirited. And what happens is, of course, they're going to cross paths. And it's up to these women to try to defend their house, defend themselves from these 2 kind of Union monsters. It's not the idea of, portraying like the Southern people in the Civil War as, I guess the protagonist is not new. We've, stuff like a lot of the Italian films, again, that's different, the spaghetti westerns with like Good, Bad, all that kind of stuff there. It's a little different. And, we also have this idea, the outlaw Josie Wales, too, as well. It's kind of a weird thing, though. Obviously, all the time you have these kind of like Southern characters, like an actual slave with them, and they're bonding together to stop the Union. Again, war is an awful thing, and they do show a lot of that. See, the thing about the movie is... the one thing I have a major complaint about, like, I think it's well shot. I think it's well directed for the most part. I don't care too much for the script. It definitely tries to do a deal where, there is some sort of attraction or some sort of, I guess you'll say maybe, I don't want to say disappointment, but regret definitely towards the lead female and the lead Union soldier, that like it has like this tension, of course, between them as she stays at one point like she's never been with a man and all this kind of stuff there, which I think is just doesn't work very well. Besides that, like I these layers like don't work great, and there's a lot of these like soliloquizing like moments where these characters have these big monologues, and in them like I'm not trying to sound rude, but like 80% of the cast sounds like they're reading lines to me. Like it doesn't come off natural. It doesn't feel like they're very natural here. Like and none of it. Like I just had trouble. Not that they're the worst actors or anything like that. It just doesn't feel proper or natural to me. Like especially the lead. I just didn't really care much for her performance. Her character just didn't do much for her. me, and I don't, and that it's a big thing in the movie, right? The first like 5-6 minutes, I was like, oh, they're really setting this up well, and I really think that we're gonna get something special. I thought it was like just a nice little brutal moment, and I was like, oh shit, just to set the pace of the film. But yeah, it just this movie as a whole really didn't do much for me. Yeah, I feel like if you want to see something in this vein, Jennifer Kent's movie, The Nightingale, is the vastly superior version, although that's in Australia with like Aboriginal people and everything like that, and I just think that movie is a much better done, more powerful, poignant movie, and in this kind of the same vein. This one does have an interesting like perspective because we have it, Southern people fighting, against like the Northern invasion, and it does have this tinge of feminism in there too. And I'm sure that other people could describe this better and pull out the themes much better than myself, to be honest. But as far as what I see here, it didn't do much for me. Like it felt a little flat is the way. Like on paper, I'm like, this sounds great, but as it delivered, it just comes across a little flat for me, and I don't want to be too negative about it. Like it's not a poorly made movie or anything like that. And a lot of people will dig it, but The Keeping Room really didn't do much for me, unfortunately. But don't let that discourage you. Check out the trailer, read some things about it, because it's worth watching, and I think some people will find a lot of love for it. But it's just like I said, it just didn't do much for me personally. Okay, the next one up is from Scorpion Films, and this is Lone Wolf McQuade. That's right, directed by Steve Carver, who did stuff like River of Death and like Bulletproof, which I think I covered on here, the Gary Busey one. Anyways, River of Death is a lot of fun. Steve Carver, he also did Drum, which I love. He's a director that always casts like really well, he has a bunch of character actors in his movies. He's obviously like a big fan of Peckinpah's stuff, and I know he's a film fan. Like just seeing like him post stuff on Interactions and everything. Like just you can tell this dude loves movies, and he always cast well. And his movies are very entertaining and fun. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. So Lone Wolf McQuade, I must admit, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not the biggest Chuck Norris fan, but when you have Chuck Norris in your lead, he's not going to be the best actor, right? He's not going to have the best screen presence, but Chuck Norris can fight. So you're going to see a lot of good fighting. So to kind of like counter that, right? Like you have always solid character actors to kind of carry the weight in here. And we have David Carradine as the baddie, which is fun. But then like you have LQ Jones and RG Armstrong, which they kind of posture Chuck Norris up a little bit, and other people pop up too that are enjoyable. So you're like, well, I like that. And a lot of these actors pop up in a bunch of these movies too. Oh, William Sanderson's also in here, so it's just riddled with people that I always enjoyed watching, and a lot of older films or even films of this time. So essentially what we have here is he's a Texas Ranger. Chuck Norris is this Texas Ranger, kind of a precursor to Walker, Texas Ranger, of course. At the very beginning, we like set up how big of a badass he is. He helps these like these cops against this like drug cartel, and he shoots a bunch of guys and whoops a bunch of ass. But he's a lone wolf, right? He doesn't do things proper. He doesn't got style, according to R.G. Armstrong. So he gets chewed out. He causes a lot of damage, and stuff like that. So eventually what happens is he gets tied up with this big bad, and David Carradine, who's like, he's like getting all these weapons and whatnot. And, of course, this is one of these deals though, where like the bad guys really mess up like Chuck Norris's life. They kill friends of his, they kill a bunch of other people. So it gets dark, like, they even kill, I don't want to spoil like a lot, but it's one of these ones that doesn't really take prisoners. Lots of people get killed. Lots of like, of course, Chuck Norris is gonna have his breaking point and whatnot. It has like this big Wild Bunch-esque like shootout at the very end. Like you could tell, in like the vein of something like Extreme Prejudice, which came after this, but definitely the Wild Bunch, right? And I believe didn't the cinematographer who did the Wild Bunch, didn't he shoot Drum as well, which I believe is a Carver film? So I mean, like I said, this guy, he's a big Peckinpah fan, from as far as I could tell, at least respected the filmmaking techniques, and it shows in his movies, which I love. So like there's a lot of action, there's a high body count, and Chuck Norris does whoop a lot of ass. David Carradine I like watching. He's entertaining, and he's a good baddie, and whatnot. And there's a lot of cheap goons. Like they take the time, in a lot of these like body count movies, action movies, like they'll have like just nameless goons, and they won't have any henchmen that you recognize. They sprinkle in a couple of the henchmen, especially the asshole who pops up and attacks Chuck Norris's house later on. So, anyways, I thought this looked really solid, and again, I enjoyed it. Like I'm not the world's biggest Chuck Norris fan, but like I said, I like everything that surrounds him usually in movies, if that makes any sense. And I will watch his films. It's not like I'll stick my nose up to him because, like I said, he can't fight. You put him in the movie to fight. You don't put him in there to win an Oscar for his acting. It's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? And he's not the only action star that isn't the best actor in the world. We all know this. But hey, a lot of them I think they're my guys. I enjoy him more. And Arnold is more my type of action star. He's more enjoyable there. But I should mention that this has an absolutely phenomenal score. The score is in a spaghetti western style, and I thought it was just not to hate on this movie. I enjoyed it, but the score is like from like a masterpiece of a movie, and it's in this, and it just elevates this movie majorly. I thought the score was fucking fantastic. As far as the special features are concerned, we have an audio commentary with director Steve Carver, stars Robert Beltran, LQ Jones, producer Yoram Ben Ami, moderated by C. Courtney Joyner, who does excellent work on the film detective stuff. Then we have a brand new on-camera interviews with stars Leon Isaac Kennedy, LQ Jones, Robert Beltran, and producer Yoram Ben Ami. And to be honest, I love hearing LQ Jones talk, and he had nothing but sweet things to say about everybody on this movie. He's like, and he's still alive, man. He's just like one of the last people standing from the Wild Bunch, right? And he said a lot of great things to say about Chuck Norris, and he said, the movie's not perfect, but I'm pretty, critical of everything I've done, but I'm glad I did the movie, and I think it's pretty good. And that's like Leon, they all have such nice things to say about Chuck Norris, say he was such a nice guy on set and all this kind of stuff, and they seem to have had a good time making this movie, and they have a lot of fun and respect for each other, and that's good to see. You know what I mean? So anyways, I would recommend checking this one out. PG. Like, I would have never guessed this movie was PG. I'm kind of shocked, to be honest, because there's a lot of action and there's a fair amount of violence in this for a PG, man. PG ain't what it used to be. I mean, it used to be a completely different thing, right? I would have guessed this was an R. If you would have said I would have just assumed a rated R film. Anyways, I know that Chuck Norris didn't typically like to do a lot of violent films at a certain point in his career. I know it kind of came a little later, but this is 1983, earlier than I thought too. I don't know why I thought this movie was 87, but it looks way better than I love how 80s movies look, but it looks a lot cleaner than an 83 movie you would expect. And so yeah, it's a little ahead of its time, a little bit sooner than I thought, and entertaining movie. Recommended. If you like action flicks, I think you will dig this one for sure. Okay, next up is the Patreon pick, and basically it was Jonathan Wilhelm, and he picked Silent Rage, so I wanted to put these two Chuck Norris movies back to back. Believe it or not, I had never seen Silent Rage. This one's from 82, if I'm not mistaken. I think it is actually from 1982, and this one's definitely a rated R flick. And a lot of people compare this, essentially, Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers. This one is a weird-ass movie, too. This is probably one of the stranger Chuck Norris films I've seen. So essentially what we have here is Chuck Norris is kind of a small town sheriff, and there's like this big medical facility there. And his partner is Stephen Frust, which is the strangest casting ever. Recently I just rewatched The Unseen, where had Stephen Frust in it as well. And if you had to, that actor had one of the strangest careers. Animal House, and then he'd be in like Unseen, and then Silent Rage, and then he pops up in, what is the one, the Dream Team with Michael Keaton. So the dude had, am I mixing up two actors? But I feel like that's all the same guy, and it's just like baffling to see this guy's kind of weird, bizarre career. So he plays his kind of goofy, kind of dim-witted, overweight partner. And we also have Ron Silver in here as kind of a medical guy and a doctor of sorts, a researcher. And he, I can't think of the female lead in here, but basically Ron Silver's sister, who's in, and Chuck Norris and her interested, in each other. But the opening of the film kind of has this character who completely snaps, this kind of intense guy, and he ends up killing two people, and they have him subdued, but he breaks the handcuffs. He runs out. He gets shot numerous times, and they take him back to this research facility in this like hospital or whatever. And the people had him there as a patient, and a couple of the guys, one of which is William Finley from Phantom of Paradise and Toby Hooper's Eaten Alive, decide to pump him with a bunch of weird drugs that they're experimenting on. It's not safe yet. They don't know. But against Ron Silver's wishes, they do it, and it brings him kind of back to life. And they realize that his brainwaves are all messed up, and this creates this kind of silent rage in him. The movie's called Silent Rage because he doesn't talk. He's very silent, and he goes about and he starts to, kill people and attack and whatnot. And one day he's overheard, He overhears the two doctors arguing about Ron Silver not wanting to do this and wanting to pull the plug on him. So he decides to try to attack Ron Silver, and what happens are some, brutal murders, some killings, and everything like that. And it all kind of boils down to, Chuck Norris having to face off against this Michael Myers style killer, who basically has Wolverine like regenerative powers, which is fun. It's kind of awesome. It's part slasher movie, part Chuck Norris action vehicle. So it's a strange combination you really wouldn't expect to get, but I dug it. I think it's better than his other like horror kind of combination movie came out in 1994, Hellbound. I would put Silent Rage above Hellbound. I think this one's better, more entertaining, to be honest, and I like the cast a lot stronger. Ron Silver's really solid in the movie. William Finley is just always such a bizarre character actor. I enjoy watching him, and the other doctor is pretty intense as well. The killer is really intense, really creepy looking, big guy, really wide, crazy eyes. Chuck Norris is solid in it. There's a really fun moment where he has this elaborate bar fight with these goofy bikers and everything like that. You got to have a bar fight in a classic kind of movie like this. You know what I mean? It's still carrying over, like the classic Western tropes and everything like that were in comedy, and also like bar fights and comedies and all this kind of stuff feels very much of the time. I feel like bar fights, when did those kind of stop in movies? I feel like there's not many, you know what I mean? But forever, there was always a bar fight, enjoyable. But yeah, Chuck whoops some ass. The bad guy is creepy, and it's enjoyable for the most part. It's a Mill Creek Blu-ray, so it doesn't look horrible. It has subtitles. I don't know what more you could ask for. It has 3 movies on the disc. It has Wet Line Fever and Blind Fury as well, both of which I should check out. I don't feel like I've seen Blind Fury, but I might have. I can't remember. And White Line Fever is one I've always wanted to watch. I know it's got Jan Michael Vincent and a bunch of other character actors, some Peckinpah regulars, so it's totally up my alley. As far as Silent Rage is concerned, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I didn't know. It's kind of exactly what I enjoyed it a little bit more, because like I said, I'm not the biggest Chuck Norris fan, but I guess I do like his movies. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I just, his acting, he's not a great actor to me, and he doesn't have as much screen presence or charisma to me as a lot of the other guys. But hey, like I said, you don't really always watch these movies to see like Chuck Norris's acting skills, or you want to see him fight, and he does that. And over time, he got a little bit better. With his movies got worse, but he got better. If that makes any sense. That's kind of how it goes with a lot of these actors, action stars, or whatnot. Not always, but hey, Silent Rage, entertaining enough. Check it out. I would give it a slight recommend. I enjoy it. This is going to be for everybody. And also should mention how weird of a character Stephen Frust is. Fucking bonkers, man. Just so weird and so like comic relief, but at the same time, like back in these 80s movies and stuff, 70s movies, they kill their comic relief, which is so crazy, right? So anyways, check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. Silent Rage. Okay, the next one I'll be a little brief with. So this is going to be part of the summer series. I think there's going to be a discussion on it. And this is 2003's Cabin Fever, directed by Eli Roth, his directorial debut. And I'm not going to say too much about this. It'll probably come up on the show. But I remember when this came out, it really had like kind of a splash in the horror movies. And it was just kind of exciting, I grew up renting stuff from the video store, so I was big into like 70s and 80s horror movies. I held those on like a pedestal really young. Even before that, I liked Universal. So I liked old films. And then when you get to that point where you're 13, 14, 15, 16, you start getting to high school, and you're just in that really hater phase where you hate everything and you just don't like anything. Everything sucks. It's not like it used to be, yada, yada, yada. And so then like Cabin Fever came out, and it had like this, hype behind it and everything. And I eventually did get to see it. I think I saw it fairly quick when it hit DVD, and I enjoyed it. It was just one of these things that I felt was refreshing at the time, and I dug it, Eli Roth clearly loved horror movies, and it showed. It felt like an old school throwback, had like goofy characters, had just a strange kind of exploitation element, and it was a virus movie. So it just spoke to me, and me and my friends watched it a lot. We all dug it, and rewatching it this time, it'd been a while. Eli Roth's come a long way, making films, and I still think this might be his best of the bunch. I don't even mean that as an insult, But, it's just maybe my personal favorite. So, like, essentially what happens is it's very much a product of its time, too, as well as being a throwback, especially with the characters and their dialogue and all that kind of stuff here. So we have a group of friends that go camping, and what happens is they're exposed to this strange virus that starts to, like, eat their flesh, and it spreads, and, the local kind of people do not want this spreading, and that causes a lot of problems as well. There's some familiar faces in here. Oh, what are the you got Ryder Strong, Joey Kern, James DeBello, Giuseppe Andrews, two people from Detroit Rock City are both in here. Like I said, Eli Roth has a cameo, and Jordan Ladd, I believe, is the actress's name. Both the actresses are very remember. Serena Vincent's the one I always forget too. Well, Joey Kern plays a complete douchebag. He's very funny. Some of the dialogue will probably be a little bit more dated, and maybe it will bother some people, but stuff like that. But I think that in more so, Hostel has more of that, but that makes more sense with the characters, I guess. Anyways, it has a good amount of gore, a good amount of cringe moments, and it has this, throwback quality that Love Letter, that, Hatchet would have as well, although Hatchet, I feel like, is even more comedic than Cabin Fever. But Cabin Fever also has, that trauma quality to a certain extent, just a little bit, because, Eli Roth coming from trauma. It has, some bizarre characters that just do bizarre moments, add, a layer of surrealness to it. Anyways, I dig Cabin Fever. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think that it's a movie that's very much a product of its time while being a throwback and still works today for me. So, check it out. Again, another one that we're covering on the summer series, possibly, and this is Psycho 2. Starring Anthony Perkins, directed 22 years after the original Psycho, directed by Richard Franklin, who adored Alfred Hitchcock, big fan of him. He also did Cloak and Dagger, and I think he did Link and some other movies. I think he's an Australian guy, if I'm not mistaken. I think he did Road Games. Anyways, this also has Vera Miles in it, Robert Loggia, who's great, who's the Dennis Franz, and who else pops up in here? I know I'm missing somebody of note. But anyways, Norman Bates comes back he gets released. He's a mental institution and all that kind of stuff, and he goes back to the hotel, which is a horrible idea, right? He starts working as kind of like a short order cook, and he meets Mag Tilly, and he ends up letting her stay at the hotel and everything. Dennis Franz is like a sleazeball, perfect sleazeball in this movie. So he ends up having trouble with him because he's running the hotel. Anyways, Perkins starts to kind of go about the big house and everything, and weird stuff starts to happen, and you find out Robert Loggia's his doctor, and there's people from the past that are not happy that Anthony Perkins or Norman Bates is out of the hospital, and things start to you don't know if he's slipping back to his old self with his mom and all this kind of stuff. So it creates a lot of mystery and suspense, and it's just well shot, well acted. Anthony Perkins I love. I mean, he's a great actor, and Psycho is one of the greatest horror films of all time, and the most classic. This one, it doesn't really disappoint as far as the sequel's concerned. I'm entertained by it. It's almost 2 hours. It's almost the same runtime as the original Psycho, maybe on purpose, purposely so. The ending's a blast, and the kills are pretty graphic. Not classic Friday 13th, but there's a couple where I jumped. I forgot how somebody gets something shoved through their mouth. I forgot how brutal that kill actually was. And although it works really well in the original Psycho, because we know the story of Psycho and everything like that, but Perkins has he's got a certain quality about him where you feel bad for Norman Bates, and you want him to be okay. And this one, he's more victimized than he was in the first one, because we know what happens in the first one, right? This one, you really don't know. So it creates another mystery in the fact that who actually is doing the killing. Is it Norman? Is it someone else? Is it someone trying to frame Norman? So it creates a lot of stuff, and the house is great as always. So anyway, Psycho 2, really solid movie, written by Tom Holland, who wrote a slew of other movies and directed a couple big ones, including, of course, Child's Play and Fright Night. So anyways, what can I say about Psycho 2? I think most people do like the Psycho franchise, at least a handful of them. Particularly, I know they like the first three, and probably returns on investment as they go on is a little less for people. I like the first four films, and I don't care much for the remake. It's been a while, and I never watched Bates Motel, the TV movie, or the television program that came out either. But as far as the first four Psychos are concerned, I enjoy them all to varying extent. The first one, the masterpiece. Second one, I really like, and it's been a while since the third one, but I remember even really enjoying that one because it's bonkers with Jeff Fahey. Anyways, if you haven't seen Psycho 2, I would recommend it. You could do a lot worse, especially for 1983. Okay, we're going to hop into those 1980 movies.
They did this to you! They're trying to turn us against each other! Just look at them. What do they know about friendship anyway? I'll get them. You watch. I'll take care of those sons of bitches.
Watch it, Alan. I'm shooting.
Oh, good Lord. It's unbelievable. It's horrible. I can't understand the reason for such cruelty. It must have something to do with some obscure sexual rite or with the almost profound respect these...
Getting very careless. Blood in your hair. What will we do? You want to look pretty, don't you? Pretty for me.
I can't believe you're not afraid.
All you have to do is piss on it.
Goody cat blood, ain't you? God damn it, Ralph, get out of here. Go on, get. Leave people alone.
You'll never come back again.
Oh, shut up, Ralph.
It's got a death curse.
Evil.
God, my leg! God, my leg!
I'm here. You're here. There's a fog bank out there.
Messenger of God, you're doomed if you stay here.
Demanding everything, including blood.
John, I want this material burned. All of it.
I ain't the crazy one. Remember?
In the lake, the one who attacked me, the one who pulled me underneath the water. And he's still there.
Used servitude.
I think you will all meet again. In hell.
I'd have mercy on his soul. He was one ruthless son of a bitch.
Wendy. Stay away! Darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
Well, Dad, are you proud of me now? Do I measure up? Huh?
My son was a son of a bitch, and he was no good. That's it. My son is dead. I don't want to talk about him no more.
Oh, Cindy, you're gonna die.
Mater lacrimarum.
Ma'am,
Mater tenebrarum.
we didn't find any boy.
Mater suspiriorum.
You know as well as I do, it takes all kinds of critters to make Farmer Vincent fritters.
I wonder who the real cannibals are.
And the first one up, more of an exploitation movie, but when you're watching 160, you want to kind of squeeze in some of those crazy exploitation flicks, especially when they had a huge impact, like The Exterminator, directed by Jimmy Glickenhaus. I believe Glickenhaus, yeah, he actually directed this one. You know, he was a big producer, did a lot of the Henenlotter stuff, but a lot of crazy movies, big action movies, New York guy, of course, or made his movies in New York. And this is The Exterminator, which is a classic movie. I've always loved The Exterminator, always had, you know, just, it's one of those like vigilante flicks that I think a lot of people really do dig, especially the cast here. We got Robert Ginty from everybody's favorite movie, White Fire. If nobody's seen White Fire, I recommend that for Insanity. It's also got Christopher George in here. Who doesn't love Christopher George? Geez, who else? I feel like Steve James is in here. Kind of an underrated, like, kind of, I guess I would say action kind of guy. Well, I just talked about this guy last week. Why am I forgetting his name this time? It's a smaller role, but of course he is in Friday 13th is a small role. House of a Thousand Corpses. Geez, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's a character actor, the big kind of guy from Oblivion. He's in here in a small role. So essentially what we have here is we open up with this like crazy Vietnam scene, which kind of reminds me of the stuff in Combat Shock by Buddy Gianavasi, or how you say his name, you know, that opening and the flashback in Combat Shock, like, because we know these are like the two movies that, well, there's three movies that come to mind when you have these Vietnam movies that aren't actually in Vietnam. You have this, Combat Shock, where they have these scenes, and of course, you know, frickin' Cannibal Apocalypse, also from this year, Combat Shock is not from this year, though. I don't want to confuse people. But essentially, we have like this opening in Vietnam, and it's just like a crazy scene where you see Robert Ginty and Steve James like surviving together. We have this crazy decapitation, lots of planes overhead, loud stuff, and then we have like kind of more of them coming back to like New York, and it sets up this thing where it's like Vietnam was hell, but New York's no picnic either, and these guys are working at this like place loading like cans and everything. They're obviously very close. They're best friends, and a couple asshole criminals come in, and they start to rough up the place. They're like straight goons out of like a vigilante or any Death Wish, that kind of deal. A little bit exaggerated, and Steve James whoops them. And on the way home to meet up with Robert Ginty, Steve James is attacked by them and he's paralyzed. This sends Robert Ginty into this rage, and he kind of snaps and he decides to take the law into his own hands. And he attacks this gang. What are they called? The ghouls or something along those lines. And after that, he doesn't stop. He starts to set his focus on more people, maybe mobsters and all this kind of stuff. And this catches the attention of, the politicians who are the biggest criminals of them all, which is this saying. And they don't want this exterminator out there. Some of the places that the exterminator attacks are like these really seedy, gross places, like this underground, like child, like prostitution ring, which is really fucked up, dark stuff there. And like Robert Ginty, like the bad guys he kills, you're cheering him on. It's just like this cathartic kind of deal here. So I mean, like you're always rooting for him. And also on the other side, we have Christopher George, who's also a Vietnam vet. But he makes a kind of funny comment here where he's talking with Samantha Eggert from The Brood. She's also in here as like this. She's like a doctor. And he's like, I didn't know you were in Nam. How was it? He's like, it was bad. Not as bad as New York, but it was bad. And, Christopher George also this year was in City of the Living Dead, which is an absolute classic, of course, the Fulci film. And he's really good in this. And like, I really like his screen presence. He's entertaining, great character actor. And, of course, like, the ending of this movie is just really kind of dark in a lot of ways. Like, so Christopher George is probably the most likable, most reasonable character in the film, to be honest. And, the ending, you're just like, well, that's kind of typical, right? Like, as bad as, a vigilante could be or crime could be in New York City, of course, who ends up being the worst is the politicians, obviously. And at one point they make it a statement that one of the pedophiles who is like raping the kids was a politician. He was a senator. So like, and it's like a blanket politician too. Like they don't ever get into the but so like the politicians are the most. It's definitely proving that point. And also, Exterminator's got this wonderful kind of theme music, like a song made for the movie that's very catchy and heartfelt. It's got good like kind of New York City style cinematography. You kind of have like the setting of the city and all this kind of stuff. So it's got a gritty, New York feeling that I really enjoy. It looks good and sounds good from Synapse. It doesn't, if I'm mistaken, it doesn't have too many features on here. As original director's cut featuring more gore and violence and an audio commentary by James Glickenhaus, which I would have liked to see a little bit more. And if you're looking for more like Jimmy Glickenhaus movies, look towards like, like Shakedown with Peter Weller, Sam Elliott's a fun one, or stuff he produced is really cool as well. So like Exterminator, really great movie from 1980, exploitation flick, really recommended stuff. Check it out. I'm sure that most people have and they enjoy it. Okay, the next one is an Akatsu Erotic Films one, and this one is like white uniform in rope hell, aka All Women Are Whores. Yes, a classy title. This is probably the one where you'd want to get your pervert card out. Now, this one didn't have subtitles, but I am a stubborn idiot, and I was like, I'm going to watch this anyways. It's short, and I just want to watch another Nakatsu movie for this, and just see how it is, and everybody considers this one horror, so this is kind of like counterproductive to be talking about this, because, I didn't understand a lot of the dialogue, but when you see one of these, you kind of get the gist of it. Now, I don't know. I mean, there's torture and bondage and all this kind of stuff, but I don't know if it's any more horror than any of the other Nakatsu erotic films, to be honest. Like Sex Hunter 1980 is more horror to me than this one, and some of the other ones. The other one I covered is much more horror than this one. So, essentially, I can't think of the name. A lot of them have like multiple thousands of names. So, essentially, what we have here is a nurse. And in the beginning, she's kind of like talking to this patient. You don't know if the patient or her are friends, but anyways, they go to meet up. She's delivering something to her house, and she's like this patient is in bondage, and they're all tied up, and they look like they're in a lot of pain. And she goes to help her, and there's a gang, two guys that are masked, and they tie her up and rape her, sexually assault her. And I think the movie's trying to get to the point that she's kind of like drug into this, but maybe she's interested in being into it, whatever. And she goes through these explicit, rapes and tortures and all this deviant kind of activity, all this kind of stuff here. While she like obviously is ashamed by it through her husband and all this. There's like some more people that come into it at the end. I know like saying this doesn't really help, and I don't even have that much to add when I can understand what a lot of the Katsu erotic films movies are saying, to be honest. So like if this ever gets a release from the Katsu, from the Impulse line with subtitles, I most definitely will pick it up and check it out again, because I feel like there's a lot more dialogue than one would expect, but you kind of get the gist of it, maybe possibly intrigued by the kind of torture and everything like that as equally ashamed, and there's like obviously some sort of plot going on, and a lot of more people are involved with it. Do we have like this big kind of display where all these kind of, I think, like upper crust people go in to watch this like giant bondage fest and everything like that. So it is what it is. I can't give it like a hearty recommend, or it's not like a negative. It's very typical of these movies, but I've seen some of them get crazier. I've seen some of them get more, wild and everything like that. And I'm missing like the little intricate details because I didn't have subtitles, and there isn't any subtitles for this movie. So it is what it is. All women are whores. Movie's title, not my sentiment. And who cares if they're whores? Let them do what they want. I'm just kidding. Anyways, this movie, it is what it is, right? Okay, this next one here is The Saviour. And this is more of like a crime, but it does have horror elements, serial killer, prostitute killer kind of deal in here. This is by Ronnie Yu, who would go on to direct The Bride of Chucky, Freddy vs. Jason, Bride with White Hair, or is that, I think that's the one. And so, like, yeah, this guy has a decent amount of movies under his belt, but, this is one of his early pictures, probably his first solo movie is what I was reading. And, yeah, so what we have here is kind of like a Dirty Harry style rogue cop. He's lost 5 partners, 4 of them dead, 1 paralyzed, that kind of deal. In the very beginning, he has a shootout with these 2 guys, one of which is in a motorcycle helmet. They both are, but one takes a bullet through the motorcycle helmet. Only other movie I saw do that was, of course, Hitchhike with David Hess. Amazing scene. So anyways, we see that. He kind of gets chewed out by the chief, and he's like, you're getting a new partner. Enter this, like, kind of heavy character actor who's in a bunch of these kind of Asian films. So like, you kind of expect that deal. That guy, of course, coming in here. So essentially, they're put on this case to find this prostitute killer who's killing these prostitutes for like an insane reason. Of course, we kind of get into this prostitute killer's like life as well, get his backstory, and he's the son of like a rich kind of business criminal kind of deal. And this guy's mom had committed suicide due to something that the father did, and that's why he has resentment towards prostitutes. All this kind of stuff plays into it. It's a very short movie. It's about 80 minutes long. Also, our kind of police officer is like kind of sponsoring a foster kid and everything like that. So we have like these cute, touching moments in between him, chasing and shooting at criminals with his partner and whatnot. He also starts a relationship and gets her involved in trying to figure out who this guy is. And we have a lot of this kind of stuff, like, rich people pulling the strings and murders and stuff. And the murders are fairly graphic. I thought they were, straightforward but well done. And I enjoyed this one. And I thought it moved at a good pace. It doesn't get too bogged down with a lot of dialogue or anything. It has a decent amount of action. It keeps moving, like I said. And I enjoyed this one. I thought it was pretty good. I liked all the performances in here. I think that the killer has a uniqueness about him, this kind of timidness, but also, entitlement, and just incel kind of style to him. I thought he was good. Everybody in the movie solid. And it's one of these movies where you feel like anybody can die somewhat, maybe besides the lead character, but you never know with these movies. You really never know what the hell's going to happen. In fact, see first Dangerous Encounters of the First Kind if you want to see something that you don't expect, because that movie's bonkers from this year. So anyways, The Saviour, good stuff. I enjoyed it. I would check it out if you're into like police procedural kind of, but also we get into the head of the killer and follow him around a lot. Maybe something, what was that one, Blood Rage by Joe Zito from this year. I would say that's more of a slasher than this, but this one does have elements and police procedural stuff like Dress to Kill or Cruising or something like that. But like I said, it's shorter. It's not as immersive, I guess I'll say. But yeah, that is The Saviour. Okay, the next one up is kind of a heavy hitter from 1980, directed by a legendary cult director and Ken Russell. This is Altered States, starring William Hurt. Who else is in this? I feel like I don't want to. Bob Bauerland and Charles Hayde are some bigger names. Blair Brown, I think that's the female interest in here, who I'm not too familiar with on first recognizing her. I'd seen this years back, and I barely remembered anything. This is also based on a book, Paddy Chayefsky, so I feel like it's a semi-popular book. Ken Russell, great director, did The Devils, one of the best movies ever made, right? Best performance Al Reed ever did, and that's a lot of great performances there. So, Altered States, oh boy, this is such a bizarre film. Sci-fi, drama, horror, surreal, weird movie. So, I don't even know how to go about explaining this, but William Hurt is he's like a really intelligent guy, interested in a lot of strange kind of ideas and whatnot. He likes to go in the deprivation tank and kind of explore and whatnot, and take drugs, and he gets really interested in this idea about primitive civilization, and somehow tapping into the idea that you can get into as a society's whole, their memories, kind of going back to that prehistoric jelly in your brain, and kind of having those moments and this shared experience through the human race and the beginning of time and everything like that. So he ends up being led to this area where this place where they do these old school rituals and use these kind of drugs that are kind of made by the tribe or this group, and he ends up using them, and he hallucinates extreme, and he gets the idea that he can use this drug plus the deprivation tank to kind of find new experiences. And what happens is, and learn things about the human race and the beginning of time, because he's so interested in all this kind of stuff, and it means more to him than anything, more than his wife, more than his family, all this kind of stuff. So as it goes on, he starts to kind of change, de-evolve, if you will, and we have some really crazy elongated chase scene, and just so it adds. It's such a bizarre film. The visuals are wonderful. Sometimes it feels satanic in there. Sometimes it's just a brightly colored, amazingly surround sound deal. The sound mix is great. The colors are very good, and William Hurt plays a really good performance in here. Such a bizarre, non-typical lead performance from somebody. He's disconnected and he's only interested in being a scientist. Bob Bauerland is really good in it, of course. He's solid, and I like Charles Hayde. I've liked Charles Hayde since I was 8 years old, and I saw him in Nightbreed. I thought he did an excellent job in that movie. Not lying down dead, walking around in my fucking cell dead. He's got a great demeanor. He's good in this too, and it's good to see him in more of a good-natured thing. And he's the sense of reason in this, so he's always yelling, which is. He cast him well, because I believe he was in the Hill Street Blues as well as a cop. I don't know if he was the chief, but he probably was the chief, I imagine, yelling at everybody. That's where I would cast him as, and Hill Street Blues before my time. But at Nightbreed, he's a cop, and he's constantly yelling. And this one, he's always trying to talk them out of everything. And anyways, it's just a really solid, bizarre, weird movie. Like I said, I had not read the book, so I don't know how in-depth it goes, but it's got a lot of heavy ideas and weird stuff going on, and of course it's science fiction, right, but it's also a little bit horror and a little bit, very psychological too. I'd recommend checking this one out. If you've never seen Altered States, I think most people that have seen it do enjoy it. As far as the features are concerned, it's only a theatrical trailer, which is kind of a bummer, but it's a Warner Brothers, and the surround sound's great. It has a certain unique look about it, you know what I mean? It doesn't it's not the most clean looking movie, if that makes any sense, but I think it does look really good at the same time. So it goes over a huge chunk of these people's lives, and the relationship with his wife is also unique and different, and it does feel like something that could even be like a David Cronenberg in a lot of ways. And I mean that as a compliment. So anyways, Altered States, great stuff. Okay, this next one is one of the Hammer House of Horrors. And this is, I think, another Peter Sasdy, who did a handful of these. And this has Delhelm Elliott in it from A House That Dripped Blood and Transmutations and a slew of other movies, the Indiana Jones films. And this is Rude Awakening. It's on the first disc of the Hammer House of Horrors. This is one that I originally saw on the Thriller tape, and I always remembered it. It's got a classic little story here. So So Delham Elliott is, I don't know exactly where he works. I think he is possibly, where does he work? I think he works as like an estate guy. He like settles estates for people, houses, and properties, all this kind of stuff. One day this guy comes in and he tells him that he wants to kind of settle this estate, sell it, get everything put together. He's like, okay. So he goes there, and this is where like things start to get really weird. Like the body falls in the dumbwaiter and it just freaks him out. Then he wakes up at his house, and so like you start to realize that like he's like never know if he's in a waking nightmare. This is before Nightmare on Elm Street, which is pretty cool. So you never know if he's in a dream or he's in his reality, and he starts to go on as more and more, and in his dreams somebody always suffers a horrible death, or somebody suffers a horrible death, and then he wakes up and he's like, oh, that was just a nightmare, thank God. But he's living these two different lives where he possibly has this like different experience in another life, and people from that dream world are intermingling, you know what I mean, to the fact that where he's starting to confuse it. And everything, as an audience, you're starting to confuse it too, and it leads to some really fun moments in there where they like go in a building and it's going to be torn down, but then at the end of the film it's just got a really great delivery. It's got a good payoff. And I think it works really well. So it's like, I don't want to spoil the payoff because this is probably the best of the Hammer House of Horrors, to be honest, so far. I think it is actually the best one. It's the best thought out, and just the payoff is the best. And Delham Elliott's a pretty good actor, so it all works. I mean, he's a good actor, so it works really well. And so I don't want to spoil this one, but Rude Awakening is probably the best of the bunch, and I remembered it. I remembered the ending from 10 years old. Had not seen it for 20 years or whatever, 25 years, and I remembered it. So it left a lasting impression. Always remember the cover of this one too, with the awesome claw kind of ripping at the ground underneath the bed. Not a creature feature, but still a good cover nonetheless. Anyways, Rude Awakening, I recommend checking this one out in the Hammer House of Horrors. If you only can watch one so far, I make it Rude Awakening, to be honest. My favorite of the bunch so far. Hey guys, we're here to do Blindspot for you, because you picked it. You picked the 1971 horror anthology from Amicus Pictures, The House That Dripped Blood. Written by Robert Bloch. This is directed by a guy who doesn't typically do horror films, so I'm not too familiar with him. I'm sure maybe he's done something I've seen. It stars, I'm sure I just thought my watch. Delham Elliott from a slew of movies, including the Indiana Jones flicks.
Which I've never seen.
Yeah, Rude Awakening, the Hammer House of Horrors. Also has Peter Cushing, Josh Ucklin, Christopher Lee, Ingrid Pitt. So it's got a great cast, and a lot of Hammer regulars. All these people, every single one I mentioned, I think was in a Hammer flick. I don't know if Delham Elliott was, but I'm sure he was. I know Josh Ucklin was, a Crescendo, Peter Cushing, of course, and Christopher Lee, and then Ingrid Pitt. Big Hammer stars there. So boom, yeah, this is an anthology. Like, it has 4 stories in there. The wraparound is essentially this guy who's showing people this house. It's all the house, named Stoker. And he's talking to a police detective who's completely disinterested in the history of the house, basically. He's out there looking for a missing actor, and Stoker goes over 3 stories until he gets to the final story that this detective's interested in. So the first story is one of with Delham Elliott. And this one, it's well acted by Delham Elliott. He's a writer in this big, weird Gothic house or whatever, and he's struggling. He has writer's block. Kind of reminds you of The Shining a little bit, right?
Yeah, some Shining vibes.
So essentially what happens is he starts to hallucinate the killer from his book and sees him in corners and everything, and he starts to snap, and you start to suggest that he possibly is going to turn into the killer, yada yada. I called this one right 5 minutes in. And the thing about these ones is at the time I'm sure it was just like really like, oh wow, that's so different and but after watching so many gaslighting stories and everything, and a lot, especially film noir, they're all gaslighting stories. This one was very predictable, and for me, and it's hard to with anthologies because sometimes they come early, and
right.
So, as far as this one, this was my least favorite, which is surprising because I don't think it's the least popular.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like that the other two are
the other 3.
Other 3, yeah, because there's 4 in this one. Yeah. I think that they're far superior than this one. Like the first one is like the weakest, so I'm like, all right, I don't want to watch all of this today, but let's carry it on to the next week.
No, and so like it's not horrible. It's like, for me, it's like a 3 out of 5 story. And Delham Elliott, he's a good actor. But again, it's just one of those deals like, well, it's got to be two things, and I think it's this, and then it was that, and I was like, see, and there's a little stinger at the end that's okay. The next story is the one that really kind of surprised me. It actually was the one that was just, I don't want to say it's my favorite. I think this third story is my favorite still, because Lee is such a different character in it. The second one was great. It's a waxwork horror story, which I love, which is very comedic because most of the people leave the house and it's like, it's the house. And then like at the very end, the guy has to explain why it's the house. So anyways, Peter Cushing is, I think he's a lonely guy. He decides to stay in this house. And one day he goes into town and he wanders into this wax museum, and it's a really great scene. The guy who actually shows him the museum, he's
fantastic.
He's in a bunch of stuff too, and I can't think of what he's from. But these movies we've watched. And Peter Cushing spots, a wax exhibit, and it's of a beheaded woman, and they turn out to be all murders in the wax, similar to waxwork later on. And of course, he sees this head, and it reminds him of like an old love. And he just becomes fucked up and obsessed with it after that. Things get more complicated when an old friend, and Josh Uckland, who's tremendous in this movie. He's so good at acting with Peter Cushing. And if anybody doesn't know, he's famous from everybody because in Lethal Weapon 2, he's the main baddie from South Africa. Diplomatic immunity. Every time I see him,
that's him.
I have to say it. Yeah, he's very good at it. And so it was really a treat every time he pops up in an older movie. I'm like, oh shit, it's that guy. I like that guy. So he's also in Citizen X. He's got is this man crying? He plays the Russian guy. Oh, he's so good. I never realized that guy's really good. I never realized how good he was. But anyways, he shows up and like they have this back and forth. They start talking and they go in the town and they go into the wax museum, complicates things, and they share a history involving this woman. And the problem with anthologies is you talk about the story and you don't want to spoil it. You can just talk about the acting and the dream sequences. But how'd you feel about this one?
I think that this one was pretty good. It might be. I think between the Cushing one and the Lee one, that is probably my favorite of the two. I think this one it was more straightforward, but I think it was presented in a way that, you know how it's going to end, but I like that it wasn't Cushing that went mad with it. It was his friend. Like his friend was like, cause Cushing, and it's like, no, we don't want to go to that museum.
Well, he didn't know either, and like he didn't want to be like, go in, because he could be absurd, But when his friend went in there, he had the same problem, and he was like, shit. Right,
and it's his friend that is the one that actually gets like pulled in deeper than what Cushing does, and how they ultimately meet their fate. And like the twist is so bizarre. Like can I spoil this one?
I think so, because I feel like a lot of people had seen this one, and it's surprising that we
you're
had,
already
to be honest.
You're already gonna know like what the twist is.
I actually thought they were gonna kill each other because it was gonna bring back the old memory of them fighting over this woman that they loved.
But it wasn't.
But it was not.
The fact of the matter is, it's like the owner of the wax museum. This was his wife, and like he just builds this wax museum with a replica of his dead wife, and then every time somebody looks at the wax museum or the wax figure, the one that he built, he kills them for looking at his dead wife. It's like, what?
It's really fun.
Right.
And he puts their head on display.
Right.
It's just really cool. That one was one of my favorites, and I like wax museum horror. Troy Howarth does the commentary on here, which I listened to and I enjoyed. He mentions all the possible waxwork influences before it. It's just, I would say that waxwork trope and circus, like backgrounds and waxworks and circuses, I always am kind of invested. I just like the wax museum aspect. It's just creepy. It's unique. And I love the circus aspect too. It's just something that's a little special. They're not done very often anymore. I think they're, kind of old relics.
Right.
And they just fit really well with horror films. And this one is no different. And the third story, which I think this is, I think that it's the best performance. I think actually Josh Uckland and Christopher Lee are my favorite performances in there. And I think Lee steals the show because, as we know, Christopher Lee is just one of the best of all time, and he usually is. He can be a very stern, angry man, in charge, demanding. He can be funny. He can be suave. We've seen that in The Gorgon. He's very suave and very cool in that, cool-headed and just very likable. He can be evil, but it's not very often, and they point this out too, where Christopher Lee's scared.
Right.
But still stern, but still scared.
Mm-hmm.
And his performance is weird and different, and it's just essentially he has a young daughter, and he calls in a teacher to teach his daughter. She's very you say I don't want to say sheltered, but neglected in isolated. Not neglected in that way, but she can't have toys. She can't have much meeting. She's scared of fire. You kind of feel where this is going, and some bad things end up happening on this one.
I think that this one it probably has like the greatest potential to be an actual standalone movie. The acting is amazing. With all three principal characters,
the little girl's very creepy. Her little
and
teeth.
Christopher Lee, yeah.
And I love the one shot is perfect because we're spoiling it. Where like he's like he calls her his name. He's like, get the doll from her, and she's like, is he crazy? And she looks out in the hallway, and the daughter's like in there, and it's like in the distance. She's got the doll, and then she takes off. He's like, shit.
I think this one might be like the most realized, and I think it's the funnest.
It's got a good setup too.
Right.
You know exactly what's happening to that doll.
Exactly. You know exactly what's happening to the doll.
Great way you don't have to show the gore either. You just see what happens to the doll, and you're just like, oh, that's brutal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry.
Steam gone.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
No, you said the most realized, the most that can be.
Yeah, but I don't know. Again, like when you're reviewing anthology.
I'm sorry, I don't have much to say either.
Right. It's like that's the problem with when you're watching anthology. It's like how deep can I go into it? You know.
Did you think that she was going to be a witch or a vampire? Which one?
Witch.
Yeah, witch, because it does say voodoo on the cover.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it says vampirism, voodoo, vixens, and something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it does the quad 4 or whatever, the V4.
There was something about something really early on, like led me to think like, oh, she's a witch, or like something witchy was going, and I just can't remember exactly what it was. But I think this one it does have the best setup. It has, I think, the most potential to be realized as a full film, and I think the acting is best in this one. The Cushing one I think is fun because just with the chemistry between Cushing and what's his name?
Uckland, how do you like the setup here? The wraparound. Do you like the wraparound? Because a lot of the other Amicus ones, like the two big ones that come to mind are the ones directly from EC Comics, Volta-4 and Tales from the Crypt, or I believe they're just kind of like, why are we here? They're just like walking through like this like tourist thing, and then like a door closes and they're like, what's going on? Let us out of here. It's like, don't you want to hear your fate? It's like, what fate? And then it's just like, and then it like cuts back after every story and it just goes into the character's face and they're like, they're all scared shitless.
Right.
Like,
isn't Burgess Meredith in one?
He's in Torture Guard.
Is that the one where he's like the fortune teller circus guy and he like burns the money?
Torture Garden is really fun because where is it? I got a better edition up here. Yeah. I have the old Mill Creek, but yeah, this is another Amicus one, and Jack Palance in it.
Yeah,
he's obsessed with Poe. He's like Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, this one's really fun. Actually,
see that I remember like watching a bit of that one, and that one is exactly what it was. It's like, I'm going to tell you how you die.
Well, Tales of the Crypt's even worse than Volta-4, but I love those. Those are
right.
I love Volta-4 and Tales of the Crypt. So
this one tries to like I think tie it together a bit looser. It's very similar to what we did with Slimy Little Bastards, where it's like...
And I had not seen this one.
No, we hadn't.
And the plot is the house, and which was the whole apartment thing, so it's like... It's
right.
similar.
Oh, yes, it's the same damn movie.
It's cheap to use a location, that's why.
Same acting caliber, too. But the...
Maybe in the movie within the movie of the fourth one, it's
right.
the same acting caliber.
But the problem with this one was like the guy was like, it's that... both the renter and in the beginning he's talking with another detective and it's like, it's the house is killing people. It's like, not really. Actually, at least one of the murders occurs outside of the house.
And then he has to dump the exposition, which I think is the same problem we have with Slimy Little Bastards.
And
to dump the exposition. But as far as the fourth story is concerned, did you want to say what this one's about?
Fourth story is well, they couldn't get Vincent Price.
I said that right when we were watching it. And then in the commentary, Troy Howarth confirmed it.
Right. But it's basically like an old washed up hammy actor who's, relegated to low budget films, and he's tired of the inauthenticity of like the costumes and the sets. And so he goes to this like, magical shop, and he buys like,
because he wants his own uniform.
He wants his own uniform, and he buys this like antique cape that looks just like the costume cape that was on the movie set, which then plays later on into the story, to be a real vampire, but the cape is actually possessed by a vampire, and in wearing it at the stroke of midnight, he becomes a vampire.
Ingrid Pitt's also in it.
And Ingrid Pitt's in it.
This actor and Ingrid Pitt are definitely playing into like themselves and being hammy and having fun with it, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Ingrid Pitt, is, so she, she's an actress, but the twist is. Can we talk about the twist?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because this is the only thing that Ingrid Pitt's got. The twist is Ingrid Pitt was always a vampire, and she wanted him to get the cloak so he would become a vampire too, because he always played fantastic vampires, and they just, want to have a big vampire family.
And I feel like this character is a precursor to Peter Vincent from Fright Night.
You think so?
I mean, he's similar. He's a hammy actor.
Yeah, I mean, he's a hammy actor.
A cult expert, right?
Right.
But the one thing, but he also reminds me a little bit of Leslie Nielsen, kind of playing as a straight man here, like, but being goofy at the same time. The one thing though is funny is the house is what, it's what it makes it. At the end, the guy says that. So like whatever you're scared of, it becomes it or whatever. Even though the first story involves somebody else being turned into it, so it's like whatever. I don't know how that works. And the second one's outside. I feel like the whole city is. But then the fourth story. What happened? Well, the third story, too, makes no sense that works because she was a fucking witch from Hereditary.
Right, and then the fourth story...
Unless it was Christopher Lee's paranoia that did it.
Right.
Could have, and maybe his wife never was a witch either. And then the fourth story, it makes even less sense because at the very end, do the people that previously lived there have to die before it takes on a new host? Because the cop wasn't scared of the vampire.
Right.
That you don't admit unless he was, which is silly.
The wraparound, like the whole, like, it's the house is killing people. Like, no, it's really not. The house isn't really doing much of anything, honestly. It's,
not really.
No, it's
and
there.
like he comes out and he's like, you see what happened is it's a reflect. It's like, what is this, Galaxy of Terror? Where they're like, whatever you're afraid of happens. It's like, is this a reason to just get some poor woman raped by a slug?
Yeah. No. It's like, quite honestly, the guy's just doing terrible background checks when he rents out these houses, and he gets them to a bunch of like crazy people.
And he's so lethargic about it too.
Right.
He's just like, oh, I guess another one's dead.
I mean, like the cop.
Hey, if we remade this in the '80s, it should have been Glenn Shadix.
Oh, absolutely.
He'd be like, Tim
I
Burton's
blame
house
not
that dripped
Heather,
blood.
but the MTV video game generation.
He would have been great. We just recast this movie by Tim Burton, made in '89.
It would have been fantastic. I mean, it's still fantastic.
I'm just kidding. I mean, no, it would have been a bad movie by Tim Burton, but we want Glenn Shadix, so we got Tim Burton.
I mean, I want Glenn Shadix in every role possible.
So, you want to go first?
Sure. The house that dripped blood in this book, which...
Here on tape, James O'Neill.
Yeah.
Out of 4 stars.
Title and author I have yet to commit to memory, and I never will. House that dripped blood, 3 out of 4 stars. I'm not reading all that bullshit. Tout Amicus Anthology, scripted by Robert Bloch, about a mysterious country mansion with an eerie influence on its various occupants. Elliot is a writer menaced by a character from his imagination. Cushing is a retired businessman haunted by a beautiful waxworks figure. Lee is a stern father convinced that his angelic little daughter is a witch. And Pertwee is a hammy horror film star transformed into a genuine vampire by an old black cloak. Good fun, with the final episode especially enjoyable thanks to the humorous performances of Pertwee and the voluptuous Pitt.
Voluptuous. Was that the guy who kept talking about like cleavage in the Hammer movies? One of these books kept talking about. That's all they talked about. Remember that? So John Stanley, Creature Features, House That Dripped Blood, 4 out of 5. Good Amicus horror film produced in Britain, written by a prestigious master of horror tales, Robert Bloch. The macabre Meister interweaves 4 stories to recount a strange mansion's history. The main thread is an investigator searching for a missing film star who checks out previous tenants. Story 1, a horror writer, a chip off the old block, is haunted by his creations. Story 2, ghostly figure haunts a wax museum managed by a lunatic. Story 3, witchcraft and voodoo dolls with Neary, Dawn Porter, and Christopher Lee. Story 4, the investigator discovers what happened to that missing star and wishes he hadn't. Directed by Peter Dufel, Peter Cushing, Ingrid Pitt, Delhelm Elliott. Yeah, so 4 out of 5 for myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mid 3 out of 5.
7.5 to 8 is where I'm at out of 10 if we go to it.
You know, and like I said, anthologies are hard. You know, like the first one, like is a dud to me. second and third are, I think, better and a bit more realized, and plus has actors I like, and the fourth one is genuinely kind of fun.
See, I don't even want to give you Tales from the Crypt because I don't think you deserve it. I don't think you'll appreciate Tales from the Crypt.
The only Tales from the Crypt movie I've seen is Bordello Blood when we watched it in science class. And my teacher didn't even turn the TV around when the tits were on the screen.
The whole movie is the TV.
Yeah,
it
was just tits flopping around, and here I am, trying to dissect the starfish.
Hey, they never. This is a fake story.
But then
this didn't happen.
And then we had to dissect the squid, and I think this is when we were watching one of the scary movies or something. I can't remember. Basically, in science class, we just dicked around for an hour and a half, and our teacher would just put in whatever audacious movie he could think of watching at the time. But he couldn't get in any of the squid for us to dissect, so we used food grade squid, which already had all their organs removed. So there was literally no point in dissecting the squid.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
Toledo Public Education, guys. It's okay, dissect these squid. I'm there are no organs in this squid.
There's nothing in this squid.
Nothing. We're just cutting up flesh. I'm watching a movie about some guy cutting up flesh.
So next week, we're going to do, I think, the last 1980 movie for you. We'll do Dario Argento's Inferno.
Inferno.
The second of the Mother of Tears trilogy. The Three Witches, Three Mothers, I should say, not Mother of Tears, the Three Mothers. This one doesn't have a Goblin score. It's Keith Emerson, but it's really good. Very memorable score. Mario Bava worked on this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the last thing he worked on, and he unfortunately died. Amazing underwater sequence. He helped with Dario, because I believe Dario got sick during this movie. So, Inferno. It's a classic from 1980. Probably one of the only movies you hadn't seen from 1980 you didn't see a couple, but this one I think you will at least appreciate. I know you like Suspiria, but you don't love it.
I like
we're not doing this.
I'm not going to say it, but
I'm losing subscribers every time.
Yeah, but I like the remake better. I think it's more real.
I like both of them. They're completely different.
They are completely different.
But you got to go OG.
We can skip it and watch the remake because you actually understand what's going on.
Stop it. We're out of here.
Bye.
All right, let's get to these questions, comments, concerns, all that. Basically, I asked you guys one argument you're tired of having or hearing in the horror community. And I use examples like Infected vs. Zombie, did Toby Hooper direct Poltergeist, all these kind of things that just drove me completely crazy. Is it horror? All this kind of stuff. Now, when I asked this, essentially people just used a lot of it as just a place to just say random opinions that are hot takes. And I hate those fucking hot take fucking things. Am I the only one that does that? I don't give a shit. I always talk about this. So it did happen, and that's fine. Some people do consider these arguments, or they have these arguments, or these whatever. So it is what it is. I made my own bed. I'm going to sleep with it, so I'll read them. A lot of them are good, though. A lot of them are arguments that doesn't matter what you think about them. You're just tired of having them. I feel like we all feel like everything's been said to death. So here we go. Oh, Nick Mua, greetings, sir. Dave, your show remains a delight as ever. Sorry you had to deal with hecklers and argumentative folks when I was young and peeps respected each other and ran. Not true. I mean, it's just the internet. You don't got to look at somebody's face when you say it, so it's just much more disrespectful. Got to make us a little sociopathic. One argument that's older than Bob Barker. If you're watching a movie that has a rape or abuse in it, you're a rapist yourself or thinking of becoming one. Such horseshit, but this is nonsense. Is tougher to kill than Jason Voorhees. So obviously he hates that argument. Name the worst tagline you ever heard. It can be for an excellent movie. Oh, what's the best and worst thing about 80s nostalgia? Geez, these are good questions. And name the worst movie your favorite actor was in. Geez, I feel like I don't know if I have favorites actors, like actors I adore, but I don't know if I have an ultimate favorite actor, So every actor's done some bad movies. Warren Oates is a great actor. I like him a lot, but I can't think of any that he's truly done that are horrible. And even if the movies aren't great, his performances are wonderful. So I don't really know. I don't think I've ever seen one of his movies where I thought it was bad. So I really don't have any for that. But let's say Nicholas Worth is another character actor I love. One movie that I think he did terrible. A terrible movie he's in, I'm sure. I know there's B movies, but I love those too. So I don't really have an answer for you. Let me think of an actor I like that's in a bad movie. Groom Lake, Tom Tolles. There we go. It's a super low budget movie. It's not even the worst movie ever, but it's a low budget movie, and I love Tom Tolles. Not great. So name the best and worst thing about 80s nostalgia. The worst thing for me is people won't admit when they have it. Like sometimes nostalgia really plays a factor into it, and it's okay to have it. It's okay to use it as an art. But sometimes you need to admit when you have it. You need to be like, well, I could tell I have some '80s nostalgia here or whatnot. Or there's like certain things that people will just won't admit. Like sometimes, like if a movie's really sloppy in a lot of places, they'll just and they love it. They just don't care. They won't admit that the sloppy moments are there, and that's probably because they're blinded by nostalgia. So people being blinded completely by nostalgia is the worst. But the best thing is just having that warm fuzzy feeling, taking you back somewhere where you can never quite get there. Nostalgia is always bittersweet for me because you start to get that like itch of that feeling, and you want to dive in more, but then it's gone by the time you do it. So it's like this bittersweet thing. Because you can't recapture that moment 100%, and you keep trying and you're trying and trying. It's never going to happen, but you feel good for a second and it's gone. So that's the best and the worst thing in itself is nostalgia. It's itself, the feeling it gives you. And name the worst tagline you ever heard. It can be for an excellent movie. Oh, I mean, there's probably so many like awful taglines. One that I love the movie. It's one of my favorites, and like all the great 80s horror movies, of course, nostalgia 80s, yeah. But like there's so many good taglines, right? Demons tagline is like 8 hours long. It's like they'll make cemeteries their cathedrals, and it's a cool tagline, but it's also like, hey guys, you're not writing a book. This is a tagline, right? So like there's that. But there's long taglines I love, like Night of the Demons. Anyway, so D Gulag, love it. DD, we need more directors, and that's not the worst tagline, that's just one that came to mind that I think is not as great as the movie. DD, we need more directors like Rob Zombie. He makes the movies he wants to make and doesn't care if he pisses someone or some group off. Humanoids from the Deep will always hold a special place in my heart of horror. It was one of my first horror movies I remember watching, and the creature and sleaze just had me craving more. It was the movie that really hooked me to the genre. Ken Coakley, you're right about people who troll other people for their taste in movies. It's all subjective. What bothers me is people who blow a fuse when something that was part of their childhood gets remade or rebooted. People were up in arms over the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot. Here's my unpopular opinion. Not a Ghostbusters fan. I saw it in the theater in '84. I was 18, and all the funny bits were in the trailer. Not being a fan of the original gave me a clear point of view. The 2016 version was terrible because it wasn't even remotely funny. But two can play at that game. When Star Wars fans didn't like the sequels, the studio, the producers, the directors, and the cast blamed it on the Phantom Menace. The movies, the fandom menace, see that? The movies were ill-received because the fans are evil, not because they killed the legacy characters and replaced them with flat characters. So, they blame the fans. I mean, but Star Wars does have a real toxic fan base, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that all their movies were good either, right? I mean, like, it's kind of funny. Both things can be true, right? I first saw Out of the Blue as a video rental in 1985 or so. The movie was originally released in theaters in 1980 to capitalize on punk craze. I watched it because the star Linda Manns, R.I.P., was also in the movie I love called The Wanderers. That's a Philip Kaufman movie, if I'm not mistaken. There was another punk movie that came out that same year called Times Square that I did see in the theater. One of the characters similar to the character Manns plays in Out of the Blue. The character in Times Square was played by Robin Johnson. I remember her well because I had a crush on her after seeing Times Square, which also stars Tim Curry and J.C. Quinn from Maximum Overdrive. Back to Linda Manns. She was incredible in The Wanderers and Out of the Blue. She was also in The Game. She passed away last year at the age of 58, R.I.P. As for the Sleepaway Camp review, I couldn't believe that Jeremy never saw it. As much as I liked the movie, I don't know how Mike Kellen went from turning in an Oscar-worthy performance in Midnight Express to this, or how Robert Earl Jones, James' dad, went from Sting to Sleepaway Camp. Christopher Collett, who played Paul, had a decent career in the late 80s. He headlined some movies such as Firstborn as well as The Manhattan Project. And I'm glad you brought up Mike Kellen in Sleepaway Camp because I didn't mention him being in God Told Me To this week. And so it's like Mike Kellen had a bizarre career as well, man. Super weird stuff. Chris Harper, it sucks that most of the cast from House of Corpses have passed on, but much love, bro. Yep, thank you. Wasted time to control shop. Do you think if Rob Zombie wasn't a musician, his films would not get heat? Thanks for keeping videos coming out every week. I really do think that a lot of people do hold that against him, the resentment. Here's the thing. If you become like a superstar in the horror genre, like a lot of people love you, a lot of people hate you, and you touch a classic like Halloween, you're going to get some hate no matter what. But like if you look at Eli Roth or Rob Zombie, I mean, there's probably legitimate reasons that people dislike Eli Roth, Rob Zombie, whatever. You know what I mean? But they get a lot of hate, and maybe it's just because that sometimes, even Quentin Tarantino, not in the horror genre, but when the directors seem to be passionate fans of it, I feel like sometimes fans hold resentment towards them because maybe they see themselves in there. Like, I could do that. I could do a better job. I knew this, all this kind of stuff. And not everybody, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people that I genuinely think just hate Rob Zombie's movies. So, I mean, like, as far as that, any Ross movies, you know? So it is what it is. But I don't know if he would get them as much hate. I don't think so, because we had that. Remember when, like, in the 90s, there was always, like, rap people or musicians in movies that just popped up in movies and they didn't have any acting experience before? Like, they weren't, you know, like, and people just would hate on them. They're like, oh, it's got a bunch of rappers in it. And they would just bitch and bitch and bitch about the movies. Like, and it was a lot of young people and everything. Now, nobody seems to give a shit. Like, and I'm glad. I mean, it is what it is. If they suck, they suck in it. I mean, you'd call them out. They didn't do a very good job. But a lot of times, you know, they become really good actors. Like Ice-T, you know, I mean, I don't know if he's like an Academy, but he's good. I enjoy watching him. And Ice Cube, too, you know, I mean, like, I enjoy watching. And Tupac was always solid in the movies I saw him in. So it's not like they all just came in and did a shit job either, you know, like Busta Rhymes, of course, you know, it is what it is. But subjective, perspective, collective. Let me start saying, great content, brother. The one argument I'm tired of most has to be the elevated horror nonsense. People are going to hate no matter what. I have plenty of films I can't stand, but there's no need to argue. I try to see every perspective and also try to watch most films twice before I give a final opinion. The first time I watched Hereditary, I didn't like it, but I was in a bad time in my life. Now it currently sits in my top 5 of all time, and I was born in 77. Crazy, right? LOL. I say love what you love no matter who is trying to browbeat you. Take care, buddy. Look forward to all your videos. Thank you. I feel, you know what I've noticed about a lot of movies that, like, are newer ones that I end up thinking are really great? You know, it takes time. But when I walked out of Hereditary, I wanted to talk about it, but I also didn't know how much I liked it. I was like, I don't know if I felt like that, or that felt a little weird. And then, like, it's a movie that if you want to have discussions about it, like it or not, but as you go back, there's interesting points to talk about. And that's usually the movies that last. You know, like a lot of the 70s movies have points to talk or bring up and stuff like that. And I think Hereditary has it. And I think that's why it's an interesting movie. It's also really well made. And it's one of the grows on you. You know, you think about it. And it's hard because, like, a lot of these movies, classic movies, they've been with you forever. Society, you know, the horror group, whatever, has told you they're great. And when you see them, you have that perspective. And maybe you don't love it at first, but it grows on you. You think back on it. You see movies that have been inspired by it. So it becomes like part of this, you know, this pop culture thing, this piece of the puzzle that's a big piece, too, right, that fits there. And it really matters to the horror genre. And it ends up mattering a lot to you because you have these connections to it. But when a new movie comes out and you're just like, how do I hold that? I liked it. Maybe I did. You know, it's hard to determine how good it is to you or how good it will be. So it's just really complicated and it's all subjective, right? It's hard for me to put newer films in the last 10, 15 years in my top favorite horror films of all time because I feel like I have, like, a lot of my favorites I've had a lot of time with, right? And even if it's a new watch and it's an old movie, I put it in and I know where it stands in terms of context and how it aged, at least to me. So then we have The Red Room. I'm actually kind of excited to check out Rob Zombie's remake of The Monsters, even though it's apparently nearly 3 hours long. That's crazy to me. Like, and I have no problems with long run times, but, like, you know, some movies feel like they don't need to be 3 hours, and that's when I start to get annoyed. I'll still watch it, though. I do like Rob Zombie's movies. Dr. Snuff, Humanoids from the Deep is one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Remember skipping school just so I could sit down and watch it for the first time. My mom was not happy when she found out. Haha, it was worth it. Worth it. 10 Room Bizarro. Love you, man. Thank you for your movie obsessive loving atmosphere. It's comforting. Thanks. Oh, and also, if you don't know, 10 Room Bizarro has a YouTube channel, and he reviews movies. Yeah, he also loves movies as well. Darren Hartley. Hello, Dave. Oh, Raging Fury was released in UK on Polygon Video in 1987. Sadly, like most things in Britain during the 80s, it was cut 1 minute 36 seconds. Also, the Media Blasters DVD from 2004 was missing some scenes running to over 2 minutes, which I presume this error was done during the authoring. Hopefully now Arrow's Blu-ray can give Hell High the love it deserves. Regards, JB. I sure hope so. GB. Travis Linscomb. Also, for questions, I know you and Jeremy love Jessica Harper. Have you seen the Tales of the Dark Side episode, Tear Collector, starring her? It's a strange episode. Not one of the best, but she's great in it and has a satisfying conclusion. I do not recall. I used to watch Tales of the Dark Side on television a lot, but I don't remember if I've seen that episode, and it doesn't ring a bell right off the top of my head. So I have the Tales of the Dark Side series here. I need to watch all of them, but, you know, time. So then we got Jeff Keith. I'm tired of remakes. Most remakes are named and only name brand cash grabs. And I basically said, are you tired of the argument or tired of remakes? I'm asking about arguments you're tired of having or hearing or having with people. That happens. It never fails. every time I ask a question on Facebook, there's always somebody in there that answers it wrong. I ask your favorite or your least favorite 1980 horror movies, not the 80s, from 1980, and like people just answer incorrectly. Like it's almost like as a collective society we forgot how to read or comprehend. And I'm not mad about it, you know what I mean? It is what it is. Michael Fisher, he says this argument I hate, what he's talking about there, that people hate remakes. Salvador Funkenstein, I am tired of the Rob Zombie one as well, but more so how terrible they thought this Halloween 2 was. We get it, that it's not for everybody. There are worse entries in that damn series. People were out there giving grief for Rob Zombie's films for over a decade now, while Marcus Nisbel was out there churning out some not so good remakes in that same time span. No doubt. No fucking doubt. Rakesh Brown, this is a good one, Dave. The horror purists that are against films like Necrostrom using digital effects mixed with practical versus no digital effects. That's a good argument, too. The people that people bitching about CGI versus digital, whatever. We've heard everything you could say, right? And we all have our opinions, and that's fine. But the argument, maybe it should be put to bed. Mike Mitchell, I'm tired of who would win in a fight between Slasher A and Slasher B. Fun thought experiment in the 80s, but now so burnout. We can put that to bed too, I think. Chris Farrell, I agree with this one. Every horror group on Facebook has multiple of these. Week in and week out. Michael, I love these. He loves them. Peter England, you already gave my answer about Toby Hooper's Poltergeist. How LOL. James D. Cokes, is there this episode where we get 22 shots Angry Dave crossover? Maybe. Renee Roller, Fast or Slow Zombies. Troy Howarth, I'm tired of hearing how overrated certain films are. We like but we like what we like, but just because you don't like a certain film doesn't mean it's overrated. This can work for underrated too, but I'd sooner hear somebody come up with a fresh argument in favor of a disliked film. Like, yes, like, I'm so tired of people just posting, am I the only one that hates textures? Fuck off, man. We don't care. Like, sometimes books have been closed on movies, and like, if you don't have anything interesting to say about it, just saying you don't like it is just stupid. Lisa Marie Cart, people who complain on remakes like it's the end of the world. Agreed. Jesse Wright, even Hitchcock remade The Man Who Knew Too Much with Jimmy Stewart, and that remake was a better film. He's like, Jesse Wright, I'm tired of hearing about characters in horror films, especially slasher films, making dumb decisions. 1, people panic when they are in life and death situations, so they behave irrationally. True. 2, there aren't a lot of good options when you're attacked by a 6'7", 300-pound Hulk with a big machete or an axe. 3, armchair experts are jerks who will criticize no matter what. If a character runs away, they're a coward. If they try to fight the killer, they're stupid. I would bet money that the people who complain about the characters in horror films acting stupid would immediately wet their pants and curl up in a fetal position if they weren't real life or death. If they're a real life or death situation. Meacham, fight or flight, normal reactions is quite real. People that don't mention this don't understand normal horror tropes. Yeah, to like that kind of thing is like this. I always say, like, if you start to complain about that stuff, you already were out of the movie. You already disliked it, right? It's the same thing with like one little moment of CGI. You already hated the movie. They already lost you somewhere. The only time it bothers me is like when people are actively dying and then like somebody's a practical joke. Like, it's like, why are you making practical jokes when we're dying here? Like, we're on, that's weird to me. Okay, and then also, okay, Charles Meacham. I'm tired of seeing people use the terms vibes when referring to A24 production films or films that have ironic or depressing endings. A24 vibes, ick. Fucking cringe. See, like, we're also getting to the point here where I do mention this in this thread, that people are not doing, like, talking about arguments or, like, that they're tired of hearing or having. They're literally just mentioning, like, opinions that annoy them or, like, hot takes, which is what I don't like. So, which I just am trying to get away from, so it's, like, turned into, like, what I don't want. But it is what it is, right? Jamal Potter, hipsters, though, what more do you expect? Jeremiah Kipp, I'm tired of the entire elevated horror discussion as a reduction of the genre and a dismissal of entire subcategories of horror films. We can choose both. Jonathan Edward Smith, I'm cool with zombies versus infected things since they're usually unique to individual films. It's more generalizing arguments like remakes suck and I hate Rob Zombie stuff I'm sick to death of. Me too. Sean Donahue, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Oh, God. Chris Farrow agrees. It gets less quirky every December. He says, I agree, it's a Christmas movie. Just tired of hearing it. Yes, Dave, realize it's not a horror movie. Jesse Seitz, dude, the whole discussion around the movie has made me hate it so much. I'm so sick of that. It's not funny. The joke is dead. It's rotting. It's rotting in your fucking cellar right now. It's stinking up your fucking house. The joke's not funny anymore. We don't care. No one gives a shit. It's become like the get her done joke of the fucking movie community now. Stefan Mitter, would Night of the Demons 57 be a better film with the demon was shown? The answer, of course, is no. Mary A. Lilly, probably dangerous to say, LL, but I'm tired of the 80s being heralded as the best decade and being used as a nostalgia bug in horror films, TV. The overload of appealing to make that era is me exhausting. And I was like, is that an argument or just something you hate? I'm not trying to upset people or anything like that, but he says, a little bit of both. Admittingly, I do dislike how it's used, but I also several groups where they treat the 80s like a golden pinnacle that can't be touched. It does end up exalting and someone would accept other decades. So I accidentally forgot to put Seymour. Jamal Potter, especially the 70s best. So it basically turns into the thing. The thing there, though, is that we tend to have the most nostalgia and love for the era that we grew up with. So the reason that you see that so much in the groups is that you're probably dealing with people of the age where the 80s, the sweet spot, of course. We got Steven for Nandino. Is this SOV or shot on DV? That can be confusing, though, right? I always get tired when it's like, this is SOV. It's like, but see, this is not even an argument, though. Tom Brooker, there's no original ideas left argument. Statement as if you bother to look. Oh, that's so true. Tired of it. Tell me some original movies argument. Come on, we know there's good movies made every year. We certainly gravitate towards certain ones, right? Steve Radinsky agreed. None of these people watched Carousel or even reviews for Carousel 2, complaining it was too original instead of being a slasher film. Jeff Penal, sick of fans of Victor Salva versus Salva haters and Jeepers Creepers debates. Just stop watching this shit and move on. Michael LeBlanc, is Cabin in the Woods actually a good film or just extremely overrated fluff? I've never been a fan. Wink. J.A. Edge, I'm tired of hearing how Conjuring get old. You see, like, these aren't even necessarily arguments. These are people just hot takes. I gotta stop reading these. Cassidy Botwin, Michael Myers isn't in Halloween 3. Robert D., I'm tired of who's better, Argento or Fulci. They're both awesome, so who cares? Edie Edward Wood, how X is equal to Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Neil Machindo, I'm tired of people pretending Evil Dead 2 is better than Evil Dead. Evil Dead is better than Evil Dead 2. Radinsky, all remakes suck, as several films they love are remakes without even them knowing it. The Thing or Blob. Also, most remakes seem to be fine at worst. I feel it's more rare for a remake to suck. Carrie Struthers, I'm frankly sick of hearing everybody prattle on about zombies and how they move. Most folks who say they can run got some piranha-type oral device that helps them consume food. Is the younger generation makes me think of horror as a social or solitary experience in regards to viewership. James Bickard, is there anyone more annoying or poorly dubbed than Bob in House by the Cemetery? No, end of discussion. Maybe not poorly dubbed. I'm so over Bob, like people complain. I do not give a shit. I don't hate Bob. Leave Bob alone. I've seen so much worse on a daily basis than Bob. David Rickard, unpopular opinion, but I don't like Ari Aster. Or the whole elevated horror thing sucks. Yes, I'm just bored of reading how much people don't like things instead of post that celebrate films. I agree. Like, I never get mad at somebody for liking something I don't like. I'm like, cool, maybe I'll check it out. When somebody's just hating on shit all the fucking time, you're just like, okay, we get it. And just like people seem like they hate everything. Matt Floor, David Rickard, this irritates me more than anything. I watch horror to enjoy and have fun. Me too. David Rickard, exactly. Under all categories of horror, there's films I like and films I don't. I don't blame it on the subcategory and then don't want to blast them over the internet because of my opinion. People put months on their lives into making films and no one sets out to make a bad one, so I leave it at commenting on films I enjoy. Aaron Mazzola, the Rob Zombie argument, for sure. It's a pointless argument. Rob Kopinski, yeah, Rob Zombie as well. So freaking tired of it. Most of whom probably couldn't tell you one thing about the guy's personal, professional life except his movies suck. So over it. Halloween 3 with no Michael, yep. How about the argument that Carpenter's The Thing is a remake? I just personally do not agree for many reasons. Mostly I'm tired of hearing about it, but that's just me. I am tired of the argument that Friday the 13th 5 sucks because there's no Jason. What are we, 4? I swear. What are we, 4 years old? Lee Bishop, I'm tired of people trying to classify Jason Voorhees as a Deadite. David Luton, I'm tired of hearing people say The Shining is overrated and Stephen King adaptations are crap. Seriously, though, I think Rob Zombie and Eli Roth hate fest are most annoying. Both directors have made very good films. Lacey Liu, that Scream ruined the horror genre. Now, I have heard this argument before, and that's, everybody knows Lacey Liu. She loves Scream. That's her thing. And, like, do you blame Halloween for the bad slashers that came out afterwards? You know what I mean? Like, Neil Lemoy, who said that? Jeremy Summerall, it's definitely did all the clones that came after. Sure as shit tried, though. I mean, it's not a movie's fault if it's ripped off. I mean, and horror was in a bad spot at that time anyways, so. Bill Rudd, Gabriel Jewett, people say the 90s is the worst decade for horror. Basically, they argue a bit about it, but, you know, he says the first half of the 90s was good, and I agree. I think the first half of the 90s is fine. I think when we start getting later 90s, early 2000s, we get in a rough patch. Joachim Johansson, Walter Peck did nothing wrong in Ghostbusters. We have some arguments here. Matthew Cantor, I'm tired of hearing how physical media is dying or dead. Hello, if there are companies putting physical media out, then it's not dying or dead. Thomas Filio, I've been hearing home media is dead for the last 10 years. It's still around. I agree with you. And Kopinski agrees. Bill Rodriguez, is this horror not argument? Yes. The only time I ever even partake in that is if it's a joint pick. You know what I mean? Morton Suzak, I'm tired of people praising Ty West. That's less of an argument. But Neo Machino, what's all this talk about Mold being the best horror movie of all time when it's clearly a sci-fi horror comedy hybrid? Okay. Get your categories right, people. Neil obviously directed Mold. It's a very fun movie. Jason Howard, I'm tired of complaints about remakes and reboots. No, the new one is not going to erase the original or ruin your childhood that you're 35 years removed from. You don't have to like the remake, but it's also not going to murder you in your sleep. It's perfectly fine that it exists. In fact, even if a remake is terrible, it will often shine new light on the original, bringing new fans and maybe even a shiny new re-release with tons of bonus features. Matt Flower, to be fair, the Poltergeist remake stabbed me and took my wallet, which kind of makes me laugh. Steve Friedel, Rob Zombie is a genius and brilliant filmmaker. Toby Hooper did direct Poltergeist and the Vision of Spielberg, and it's a virus and it's called COVID. Matt Flower, when people brag about a movie didn't scare them, you're an adult. You know it's not real. You're not special. LO, yeah. It's like, not even scary, though. It's like, what are we, fucking 6? I know what you're saying. Tony G, Tony the Dead, vampires don't sparkle. Who cares? Right? Some vampires sparkle, apparently. I mean, the rules for movies is weird. Mike Merriman, then we need to support garbage just because it's horror. Good choice. Pretending nostalgia has zero to do with how we judge ranked movies. Another good choice. Mary Lily disagrees, though. In my case, really, it doesn't. I have just 4 films I view through the lens of nostalgia, none of which are horror. Robert Mazzola, maybe people thinking all horror movies are the same. Jesse Seitz, people who shit on every single horror movie made after 93 and go hard on people who actually enjoy these films. Just admit you only like 10 movies from the 80s and maybe aren't that big of a horror fan. I love it. Also, people get mad at film because they don't see themselves in it. Legit, one dude's complaining about Girl Walks Home at Midnight. Fucking hilarious. Yeah. Like, I don't need to relate to the characters. I just want to be interested in them. I don't even have to like them. I just want to watch them. If I want to watch them, that's what interests me. That was funny. Jesse Seitz coming in with the heat. Kevin Keegan, all found footage and fake doc horror movies suck. It's lazy filmmaking. I'm tired of hearing that shit. Thank you. Agreed. There's some great ones. I mean, Cannibal Holocaust, one of the best horror movies ever made. Jay Wall, people calling hostile torture porn and the whole censorship question about films like a Serbian film Anatros. Where's the line and should there even be one if the footage shown isn't real? David Gibson, I don't like the is or isn't horror debate. It's hard to even use logical points in an argument because it's so subjective. If you don't think Silence of the Lambs is a horror, that is fine, but just shut up and enjoy a great film. Scott Crawford, I'm tired of hearing people praise 80s horror saying they don't make good horror movies anymore. The 2010s beg to differ. Also, hot take, 80s horror is way overrated. Ooh. I mean, every decade has great years. It is what it is, right? And not every movie comes out. Like, in 1980, we look at the list, and it's like, that's a banging year, but not all those probably got released widely in 1980, even though they say they are. Like, 1980, 1982, 1985, 1986, but 83 is not a great year. 2015, that's in the 2010s you're talking about. Yeah, it's a great fucking year. So many good movies in that year. Mike Merriman, Scott Crawford. Whoa, I sort of agree. Not that I don't love 80s horror, but I think the decades are definitely sold short for sure. Yeah, Scott says, yeah, I also love 80s, but people love the decade like second coming. It's good, but not that good. Most of my favorite movies come from like 70s, 80s, 90s, just because, I've had a lot of time to spend with those movies. Zach Puccinelli, tired of hearing how great Return of the Living Dead is. Deep down, everyone knows it sucks. You're literally the only person I've ever heard say that. Like, that's just like one of your that's a hot take anyways. It's not an argument people are having or at all. Jonathan Wilhelm, that you and George Eastman are not the same person. We know the truth, Dave. Wish I was George Eastman. I'd have more money. But I wish I was still younger. So, Jeff Gardner, well, with the exception of Lords of Sam, Rob Zombie's films aren't too bad. I just couldn't get to that one for some reason. Dave Dunbar, that remakes suck. Rob Kopinski, I do have another. May seem a bit superfluous, but it tires me to no end that when anyone does their hearkening back to the good old days, those rental days, why is it that Blockbuster seemingly is the starting point? I'm old enough to remember that mom and pop days when video stores really meant something. It was because the likes of Video Factory and Blockbuster that most of my beloved shops, specifically Movie World, where I met the likes of Fulci and Argento, came to their end. Hearing the word Blockbuster sometimes brings back bad memories. Not a biggie. I doubt anyone else suffers the same. No, you're 100% accurate. It's very funny, that people are like, well, Blockbuster, and then like literally they killed the competition, all the places that used to carry, and they used to censor their fucking movies too. So it's like, kind of fuck Blockbuster. Like, you got rid of the competition, and then you died too, and you wanted people to feel sorry for you. It's just kind of like the serial killer getting shot down too. It's just like, well, I don't feel bad for you. I know that's a weird, exaggerating, hyperbole bullshit, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's kind of like that Blockbuster's like, well, Netflix is getting us out of business. It's like, and you got everybody else out of business. Like, it was like when Walmart started complaining about Amazon. It's like, get the fuck out of here, Walmart. I hope you die, and then I hope fucking Amazon die. You know what I'm just saying? Like, it is what it is, right? It's just like, you can't fucking do the same, and then when it happens to you, get mad about it. It's just it's a hypocrisy at its finest. So this week's question of the week, if I get back up to this sucker, since we talked about God Told Me To, I want to know what the most dangerous shot in a film, a stolen shot is in a film, like guerrilla style filmmaking. Is it Deadbeat at Dawn, where Jim Van Bever climbs the fucking wall or whatever? Is it a Larry Cohen movie? What is the most dangerous shot in a movie? A stolen shot. You know, that's what I'm going with. No permission, guerrilla style filmmaking. What's the most dangerous stolen shot in a film? Yeah, let's hop into this update. Okay, let's hop into this update. First up, of course, John Waters' Pink Flamingos. Had to have this. Super happy to see Criterion put it on Blu-ray. Yeah, it was just a matter of time, right? This movie is fucking bonkers. To believe this is on a Criterion Blu-ray, it's just great. An exercise in poor taste. No shit. We got a Kino order that popped in. Stunt Rock. I don't think I've seen this one. A Bryant Trenchard Smith film. Australian director. He does a lot of cool action, a lot of flicks. Yeah. Who's in this bad boy? Nobody I really know, to be honest. So yeah. Anyways, I had heard this one's pretty cool. Director of Man from Hong Kong, which is a cool movie. We got Savage Sisters here by Eddie Romero. Did a lot of movies in the Philippines. Got frickin' Sid Haig in there. John Ashley, of course. Yeah. So this movie looks like a lot of fun. Probably a woman in prison movie. I know I've heard of it, just in passing. Never actually had watched the thing. But, yeah. 1974. Then we have some horror TV movies here. We have Ants. It Happened at Lakewood Manor. Yeah. I think these are originally had the DVD here. This is a 1977 one. Kino's been putting out a lot of TV movies. It's got Suzanne Summers and Brian Dennehy. What? Let's go. Oh, this got a big cast in here. Robert Foxworth, Linda Day George, Bernie Casey. That's really cool, man. Yeah. Everybody's getting attacked by frickin' ants. They all have slip covers too. Tarantulas, The Deadly Cargo. It's another TV one that I had. I don't think I ever did watch it though. Who's in this bad boy? Claude Atkins, Deborah Winters, Burt Remsen, yeah, Pat Hingle. It's got a nice cast too. Also Tom Atkins, Howard Hessman. Man, these things are really, really well cast. These Animals Attack deals. And then the last one, Tear Out of the Sky. It looks like Grizzly Adams on the cover there. Yeah, it's a nice slipcover. Who else? Who got in this bad one? Dad Haggerty. That's the big one. Lonnie Chapman. Yeah, okay. It's Charles Hollahan. Just nice little cast again. So 1978. Yeah, it's a quick update, but hey, it's got some decent movies in there, of course. We're going to hop back to the video. Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.